Whatever. Bringing the wood. This is so rare. Oh, that'll really help. This is so rare to be here at 9 o'clock. Like, I'm normally the 4 p.m., everybody, what's that? I know, I am. I'm like the last resort. Normally it's like, it's hot in here and everybody's half asleep. Now it's actually kind of cold in here. I don't know. Yeah, everybody's half asleep. Actually, but you know who's not is me. I'm like freshly caffeinated, yeah. So I'm like, woo, let's get this thing going, yeah. Hey, I got a bunch of things to share. So have I ever shared what it's like to be in Israel on the Shabbat, on the Sabbath? So it's a trip. So in Israel on the Shabbat, come on, people. Oh no. Why is it not connected? Oh, maybe I'm on the wrong thing. No, it says I'm connected. Yeah, did it not? I turned it off. This is why they pay you the big bucks, Brandon. Cute. There we go. Ready and action. Oh, I think I got to start over. Oh, there we go. No. Oh, it says it's connected. I think this goes. Hey, there we go. I think I got to start over again. No. So funny. It says I'm connected. Oh, here we go. Now it's going to connect. I wonder if they changed the Wi-Fi again. It's weird. My thing probably changed. Hey, Brandon, are they using KCF lot or are they using staff? Anybody know? For Wi-Fi? Should be lot. Oh yeah, it does say lot right there. Okay, well I'm on KCF lot. And I hit screen mirroring and it's Youth TV, right? What's that? Yeah. Huh. No, let me try that. Oh boy. Oop, you know what, let's do this. Turn the Wi-Fi off. Oh boy. Why won't it connect? It's so weird. I hate it when it does it every time. I wonder if I should restart my iPad. I can already feel this lesson slipping away. It's going to be. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me hang on. Let's just try this. Yeah. Let me just try it. We'll give it another 60 seconds. Okay. Turn all the way off. Turn all the way back on. AirPlay. Wirelessly share. Yeah. Youth TV. KCF lot. This is an ancient iPad, but it's worked all year, so. No. Yeah, you want to say something? Yes. What would you like to say? Oh, you don't want to say anything? Yeah. Could I keep talking? Oh, wait, here we go. Okay, let's see what happens here. Okay. All right, let me open up this. Let's go here. Screen mirroring, youth TV. Yep, I'm going to have to hand it to you. What's that? You want? Yeah, you want to try? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, while Alec tries to get us going, I can't remember if I've shared this with you before. But to do Sabbath, the Shabbat in Israel, and stop me if you've heard all this, but on the one hand, it's kind of silly a little bit. Like, have I told you about, when you go into an elevator in the hotel on the Shabbat, every single button is lit up. So if you are staying on the 8th floor of a hotel, you have to stop at every floor on the way up and then every floor on the way back. Now, I used to hear these stories and wonder myself, is that even real? Oh yeah, it's like totally real. Like they even have one hotel I was at, they had a Shabbat elevator where, like, for Jews they could use that and non-Jews could just push the button. Why? Because on the Sabbath, pushing a button would be considered doing work, and you're not allowed to work. Is that the dumbest thing you've ever heard? Yeah. And so you've got people in the restaurants and they're serving food. Doesn't that sound like a lot like work? Except the food was all prepared the day before. So on the Shabbat, the food in Israel kind of sucks a little bit, right? If you go out to a restaurant, because most restaurants are closed, and the ones that are open, they're serving day-old food because, I don't know, nobody's allowed to cook, but apparently you're allowed to serve, which seems crazy, right? So part of you just goes, God, this is stupid. This is so far, and you look, this is so far from what God created the Shabbat to be, the Sabbath, right? Because we're going to be talking, Lord willing, we're going to be talking about the Sabbath today. Or maybe we'll just take the day off. Everybody said, yeah, no, we won't. But on the other hand, one time, well, not one time, but twice now, at the end of our trip, we were invited, our group, to come and share a Shabbat dinner with a Jewish family. And I got to tell you, it's super cool. And I think I shared this part with you guys. It's always hard for me to remember because I teach on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Anchor House every year. So I can't remember if I taught this or shared this with you. But here's how it starts. There's like a horn that goes off in Jerusalem, right? And the dad goes, all right, that's it, let's get started. And he goes around and he collects everybody's phone, everybody's iPad, and the controller for Xbox or PlayStation or whatever, yeah? And then he sticks it in a Shabbat locker and he locks it up. And then all the kids, they run out into the street and they start playing in the street. And the reason why they can safely play in the street is nobody drives once the Shabbat starts. And it starts at sundown on Friday, right? And in fact, if you drive your car down the street of an Orthodox neighborhood, they will throw rocks at your car. How's that? The kids will. The kids are allowed to throw rocks at your car and nobody will punish them because you're stupid enough. Yes? I agree. Yes, it is work. See, I'm just pointing out it's silly, okay? But also, it's kind of cool because at a certain time and by the way, the woman of the house has prepared the meal in advance because once the Shabbat starts, no more cooking, right? But she brings out this awesome meal, and then the family sits around the table, yeah? And they go through this, you remember Rob Wertheim? Remember how he'd stand up and go, hey, shadabadabad? He would do these, Hebrew prayers and stuff, right? But he would do that. Remember how he did that? We had a Shabbat dinner, right? Remember how he did that? And one of the first things he does is he talks about how amazing his wife is. Isn't that cool, ladies? He gets up and he goes, she's a woman of God. She's a woman of faith. She's a good mom to you kids. And he does this whole blessing for his wife. And then they go around the table and each kid maybe has a little thing where they stand up and they basically dedicate this whole dinner time to family and to God. And like, I got to tell you, like the first time I ever did this, I was sitting around looking at the table and I'm like, this kind of rocks. Like, why doesn't my family do something cool like this? Like, can you imagine if every week for 24 hours you got to put your phone away and your iPad and your computer and you didn't go to work and all you got to do was just hang out? And by the way, you know, I imagine everybody's Shabbat is different. Maybe go to the beach. You gave up. It doesn't work, huh? No?
I don't know what's going on.
All right. Well, let's just turn it off because I don't want everybody to be watching like the studio and Ted Lasso and the morning show. There we go. All right. Okay, you're going to have to use, oh no, this is going to be difficult. Well, I'm going to use my notes, but because some of my notes are on here as part of the presentation. You can figure out, huh? It's weird. It's all connected.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. Huh. Actually, I want to just try one more thing. You guys mind? Let me just try one more thing. Nah, it's not going to do it either, is it? Oh, yeah, maybe it will. Oh, no, now the TV's off. It won't work here. Okay, enough already. Go here. Oh, I had all these like fun games for you guys on the screen and everything. Now it's all for naught. Anyways, okay. Long story short, there's parts of the Sabbath that I think are really cool. And Lord willing, we'll get to some of the Shabbat here today. Okay, but first I was going to play a quiz game with you guys, and I had it all up on the board and everything, and I'm kind of really chapped right now because this is supposed to work. And normally I would be here like at 3:30 making sure it worked. That's the beauty of the 4 o'clock, right? But let's see how well you guys can do with fill in the blanks. Book of Hebrews was written for who? Jews who were tempted to return to the synagogue, the Old Testament, the temple worship. Good answer. All right. This isn't going to make any sense without it. Okay. Jesus is greater than the angels, right. But wasn't it cool that he also said he was made greater than the angels, but yet for a little while God made him lower than the angels, showing both his divinity and his humanity? I always thought that was that. He was last week we talked about he's also greater than, and it starts with an M, Moses. Yeah, you guys got that dialed right. And he's greater than all of God's household because he made God's household. I thought that was, it's hard to look at without the visual cue on that. And the last thing is, it ends with a warning and a caution like all sections are. And the warning is these words: don't blow it like they did. And so remember, the author is looking back at the time of Exodus and how they were unfaithful in the desert. They ended up, remember, their bodies were scattered in the desert. But one thing I wanted to bring up this morning as part of the review, and because it actually, I just had 2 experiences in the last like 36 hours that just reminded me so much of this. But remember, he says to encourage each other daily, right? Encourage each other daily. Does anybody remember the Greek word for encourage? And remember, here's your visual key, which I don't have your visual key, but remember your big Hawaiian friend? What was his name? He looked like Maui, but what was his name? Kaleo. You guys maybe I have a friend named Kaleo, yeah? Kaleo Ho'okani, yeah? Yeah, Kaleo. So the Greek word for encourage is para-kalea, which means come alongside and shout encouragement, all right? Now, the reason why I was thinking that for you guys this morning that I wanted to just share a brief story with you is when we were singing that song, Gratitude, you know, I throw up my hands, praise you again and again, yeah? I just sang that song bedside Wednesday afternoon, brought my guitar to a gal who's got probably another couple days to live. Like, she's sort of conscious. She's stage 4 cancer. She's, you know, it's at the end. She yesterday or Wednesday was the first time she actually wasn't physically able to raise her hand in worship, because I've been going by about once a week, and even though she couldn't sing, she could raise a hand. I thought that was pretty sweet, you know. And then we're singing, so I'm gathered around her, and here's my point. She's surrounded by a bunch of people, and not just family. There's people from our church that are going by, like Lauren Bundschuh goes by every single day on her way home from work. There's these guys I know that go to my Tuesday night Bible study. They go once a week, the three of them, and they lay hands and they pray. She's been surrounded, right, parakalea, encouraged by friends. But here's what happened this morning. Just this morning I was talking to a gal, and she's living on the mainland now, and she doesn't have that. And I don't want to get into the reasons why she doesn't have that, because to end your life like that usually means it's a lifetime of cultivating that. Does that make sense? And I remember I was telling this gal before about, well, you need to join a church, you know? And she'd come back to me and go, well, I tried that church, and I don't like those people because this and that and this and that. So I go, okay, well, can you find another church? She tried about 3 or 4 churches. She ended up not liking any of the churches. So she actually has 0 fellowship, right? 0 fellowship. Well, she's recently been diagnosed with cancer. And now she's all scared because she's like, I'm alone. I don't have anybody around that can help me take care of my dog, drive me to my doctor's appointment. You see what's happening here? This is why it's so important. Rick loves to tell this story about a guy. And by the way, this is one story, but it happens quite frequently, where somebody realizes they haven't heard from Frank in a year. And so somebody goes out to Frank's house. Maybe Frank lives like way off in the boondocks. And they show up at Frank's house, and the mailbox is kind of overflowing, and the weeds are all huge. And they go in, and there's Frank on his lazy boy chair, and he's been dead for a year. And he's either been like mummified, or he's just bones, or just a puddle of yuck, right? You know? Frank sitting in his lazy boy chair. And Rick's point is always this: how did nobody notice him gone for a year? Like, how is that even possible that somebody, like, seriously, I'd be gone for about 20 minutes, and people like, my wife would be like, where are you? Right? You know? Or can you imagine if I didn't show up here? Somebody would be like, where's Dain? Right? What's going on? Where's Dain? I would assume every one of you, right? Somebody would be going, where are you? Right? Somebody would notice. How do you get to the point of your life that you can be gone for a year and nobody notices? What does that tell you about your life and the choices you made through? Does that make sense? Throughout your life. Christians are not to live like this. Encourage one another daily, okay? That you might be surrounded by a community. Because what you're doing is you're investing in your life now and your life in the future. Okay, lecture over. Let's actually get to the book of Hebrews. That was sort of just a roundabout. Okay, so we're in Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians, sorry. I just thought to see if you're paying attention, and you were. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1. Now, I know we read this last week, but we're going to repeat it and just go real quick. Therefore, while the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us fear lest any of you should seem to have failed to reach it. Now remember, he just gave this warning about those guys all dying in the desert, but then he said, the promise remains, so it's not too late. And then he uses this word, let us fear lest any of you failed to reach it. So he's connecting it to the warning, which we ended up. But he's basically saying, look, if you're reading this, it's not too late, which is great news for us, because no matter what you've done or what you've even thought up to this point in your life, God extends his hand and he says, don't miss this. Come be with me. And it says, enter into his rest, okay? Now, he also says, let us fear. So we have to just stop for a moment and talk about what does it mean to fear God. By the way, the NIV translates it, be careful, right? But the word is actually phobio, like a phobia, like you should have a God phobia, a fear, right? But remember, it relates to a disposition towards God and his word, because fear is the beginning of wisdom. You guys know that. Okay, very good. By the way, to give you a good idea of what does it mean to, because it's going to come up a little bit later today, I know people that have constant anxiety in their life because of their relationship to God, which to me is weird. I get it, like I fully understand it, but it is sort of missing the whole point of knowing God, right? Because God wants us to know him and love him and know that we're loved by him, that we won't have fear, we won't have anxiety. But I know people who do that, which I'll bring up a little bit later. But I want to teach you something about what I call healthy fear. So you know the Ten Commandments. What is the first commandment regarding our relationship with people? So there's the first four are like, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not create a graven image. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. I forget number 4 or number 3. But what's the first one that involves people? You guys know? Honor your father and mother, right? Honor your parents. And so the way I always like to describe this is when I say I feared my father, I mean that as a kid, right? But here's the catch. First of all, just so you know, you'll probably hear me talk about my dad a lot throughout the course of the year, but I won the dad lottery. I mean, I won the parental lottery. I just had a great dad. Like, I know not everybody did, and some people, they have issues. Like my wife, for example, has big issues because her dad was not a great guy, and that gave her problems with calling God her father. Does that make sense? Yeah? Because he's not a good example. I'm just the opposite. Had the great dad. But my dad, commanded full respect. He had 3 boys and a baby daughter, spoiled, rotten princess. That was my little sister, yeah. I mean, the only girl and the baby of 4. Come on, do the math, right? But we had 3 rambunctious testosterone boys in my family, and it was a circus, right? But my dad ruled the house. And here's the crazy thing. I don't ever remember my dad hitting me. He told me later that I got spanked. I just don't remember it. Apparently I got spanked when I was a little baby or whatever, kid. But man, if my dad was like, Dinner, get in here right now. And that little vein on his head, he had this vein right here that would go boop, boop. When he got mad, he'd get all red and the vein would pop. Oh man, yeah. Did I fear my dad? Oh, I absolutely feared my dad. And yet, I wasn't scared of him. Does that make sense? Do you see the difference? He commanded my full respect, and if he was to say right now, jump, what would be my answer? How high? Yeah, because he ruled and he reigned. But he was good, and I knew that my dad loved me because I was raised in a loving household. Okay, so to fear God is healthy. To dismiss God is to doubt that he rules your life and he rules the universe, right? And so there seems to be this little dichotomy when he says, enter his rest and fear God. Doesn't it seem like 2 different things? Enter his rest and yet fear him, yeah? But it basically means to respect and understand his authority and allow him to be rescued from the stupid things in this world that we do fear. And I say stupid not to make fun of them because I get it, they're real. But all the things that bring us anxiety, fear, and strife in our lives, yeah, we instead have a healthy fear of God and therefore don't fear the things of this world. I know that's kind of complicated, but that's what I got for you. Okay, let's move to verses. It's really too bad I don't have these visuals here for you, by the way. It's driving me nuts right now because I'm looking at all this great stuff. But anyways. Okay, verses 2 to 4. All right, remember he's talking about those guys back there in the desert. He's comparing our lives to the lives of the Old Testament people. Hebrews chapter 4, verses 2 to 4. For good news, it came to us, just as to them. But the message they heard did not benefit them because they were not united by faith with those who listened. For we who have believed enter that rest. As he has said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. And although his works were finished from the foundation of the world, for he has somewhere spoken of the 7th day in this way, and God rested on the 7th day from all his work. So what he does right there at the beginning of that statement, he brings us into the story. The good news comes to us just as it came to them. So we put ourselves in the narrative of the story. Okay, what he's doing right there is everything that was happening for them is now happening for the Jews that he's writing to 2,000 years ago, and it's written for us. So what I want to do right now is tell you a little story, and again, I wish I had the visuals for you. But you guys like Pirates of the Caribbean? Shut up, you just watched it? Oh my gosh, this makes me so mad these visuals don't work, because I had pictures for you on this. Well, this is perfect, because you guys have a visual in your head. Okay, remember when Captain Barbosa is talking to, what's her name? Elizabeth. Is it Elizabeth? Keira Knightley, is that who it is? Keira Knightley, yeah, Elizabeth, right? And she said, oh, you would have us believing that we were living in a ghost story. Remember that? Remember that? And he says, you best be believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner, because you're in one now. Remember that? Yeah? Did you ever think of yourself as this? This is going to be one of these moments. Okay, are you with me? I love doing this for you guys. Do you ever think about this right now? God, the whole Bible is a narrative story of God's redemptive purpose, right? It starts with Adam and Eve in the garden, right? Goes through Abraham, all the weirdness of the Old Testament. Then Jesus comes, and then there's new characters. You got the apostles, and then the apostles go out, which, by the way, I'm reading this great history book right now. I didn't realize that the apostles, they got as far as like India, maybe even China and stuff. It's crazy how much evidence there actually is that it literally went Europe last, but it went North Africa, Middle East, and China first. It's so cool to think about, because we never hear anybody say, oh, it's a white man's religion. It is not a white man's religion, yeah? We were like Johnny-come-lately guys, yeah? Whatever, right? Okay, so it goes out, right? Now the story sort of ends in the Bible at these new churches. Like we're reading a letter written to these guys, right, in Rome. But do you realize that the story never ended? Are you with me on this? Yeah, the story didn't end when the Bible ended. That's just where God's written part of it is, and then it gets handed off to the next. So let me explain to you, like right now, like Captain Barbosa would say to you, you're living in the narrative story right now. Does that make sense? And the people that came before you, like just go back a couple generations, your great-grandparents who are dead now, right? I'm assuming. Does anybody have a great-grandma alive? That would really be something, yeah? But your grandparents, most of your grandparents are probably alive, right? If they're believers, they were living out their part of the narrative story, so that when they shared their faith, when they went through trials, as they grew, as they raised your parents, maybe yes or no, as Christians, as they perpetuated the gospel, and now have brought it down onto you. And I think you all grasp already this concept that what we do here at Anchor House is we have all these old wizened people, right? Teachers, people that have been learning their whole life, and they are feeding into your lives, right? For the next, what, you got 6 months left or something, right? Feeding into your lives. You guys are consuming all this information, but you're not just getting it up here, you're using it. I love how you guys are so active in our church. You don't realize what, like, Brandon, you were such a rock star last Sunday with the sound system, because the sound system was a total nightmare. I mean, and it wasn't your fault that the sound system was a nightmare. And Kaylee, well done sitting on stage for like 2 straight hours or something like that, yeah? And I think you raised some money because some guy told me he wrote a big check and it went to the donation. So you actually helped bring in scholarship money for people that need it for next semester. Well done, Kaylee, yeah? But you see what we're doing here? We're handing the torch off to you guys. Does that make sense? You're just getting ready to go. And I know this sounds kind of, what's the word? Morbid. But you know, in 20 years, I hope to be dead, right? And I hope 20 years from now, you guys are all fully active and engaged in ministry. And I hope maybe you remember, I mean, really, this sounds funny, but it's true. I hope you remember just even one thing from your time with me in the book of Hebrews. Really, one thing. If you remember one thing out of, like, I think we've got 18 teachings out of the book of Hebrews, and you find yourself having coffee with somebody someday, or maybe you're preaching a sermon on a Sunday morning or saying something between songs while you're leading worship, and you say, isn't it cool? In Hebrews, it says, I don't know what you might pick up on. Maybe that thing I said earlier today. Jesus came out of heaven and for a little while was made lower than the angels so that he might be our real high priest who would go through everything that we went through. So he knows exactly what our human experience is like. And you can pass that on. You catch all that? Yeah? This is what I mean when I say, you're living in a ghost story now. You are. This is our time on the planet. Everybody in this room in 100 years is dead, right? You ever heard that statement? 100 years from now, all new people. All new people. Just think, everybody you know in your life right now, 100 years from now, they're all gone, all replaced by new people. Hopefully your kids and your grandkids, maybe even your great-grandkids, yeah? But this is it. So the author of Hebrews says, the good news came to us just as it came to them. We have the same opportunity to live all this out, okay? So the key, of course, is they didn't listen with faith, yeah? And we need to have faith. In fact, when I talk about faith, David, you'll appreciate this because you're a Padres fan. I wrote in my notes here, yeah? What does the faith imply? Well, I have faith that someday in my lifetime the Padres will win a World Series. Like, seriously, I'm banking on it. They hear they're going to sell the team? Apparently we're going to get I just heard that yesterday. Maybe we'll get a new owner that'll get his crap together. We can finally beat the Dodgers and win the World Series, right? Now, I also might believe that, the moon is made of cream cheese or whatever, but that kind of faith doesn't really affect my life much, right? Yeah? But in the Bible, faith is manifested in faithfulness. In other words, how faith manifests itself in the Bible is not just something I say, but it's because it affects the things that I do. It affects the way I think about things, and it affects the way I act upon this thing. And so this whole passage in Hebrews divides people into 2 points. Some people enter into his rest, and some don't, based on whether or not they activate their faith in this, okay? So we're going to briefly talk about the Sabbath rest of God. Now think of this. Now, just so you know, I realize that this is the goal. This is what we are, and I love that we are striving to enter his rest. Doesn't that sound, what's the word, oxymoronic? You know what an oxymoron is? An oxymoron is like jumbo shrimp, right? Or government intelligence. Or, well, come on, what are some other ones? Plastic glasses. That's okay, Brock. Brock, I've never actually heard that one before, and that was actually really good. Thank you. Now listen, so it sounds interesting to say that we strive to enter into his rest, right? But it's kind of true. So Adam and Eve, think about this, were completely at rest with God. They could walk with God and talk to God as naturally to God as with each other. And they were at rest in the original sense of the word. Can you imagine this? Adam and Eve, no anxieties, no worries, no pain, no frustrations, no heartaches. They didn't need God's forgiveness, no sins to be forgiven. They didn't need to be consoled because they never grieved. They didn't need to be encouraged because they never failed. All they needed was the fellowship that they had. They were resting, but yet they were active. Does that make sense? Yeah, they were doing stuff, but they did so in the rest. Yeah, and so I have one small example that's kind of a silly example, but sometimes we've got to work to get to the point where we can actually rest a little bit. And I'll give you an example. Right now, as I stand up here and talk to you, I am so stiff and so sore. So yesterday, my quote-unquote day off, yeah, I had to, you guys were in here, you can't see me drive by, but I drove by twice with 2 giant truckloads of palm fronds. I had to clean out my palm fronds from I got a hedge of manila palms. And if that sounds easy, it wasn't. It's about 4 straight hours of manual labor doing this. Oh, God, it hurts so bad right now to do that. Probably shouldn't have done that right there, yeah? Like reaching down, picking up 3 or 4 big giant palm fronds, and then throwing them into my buddy's truck. And then the whole time you're looking out for big giant centipedes, right? And I killed 2 big fat boys yesterday. Yes, Brody? Hawaiian issues? Yeah, this is trouble about living in Hawaii, yeah? And it's so funny because, I could just totally feel that right when I just did that move right there. I am so sorry. But here's what I wanted to tell you. When I finally got done, it took 4 hours. I looked at my palm hedge, and it was just a thing of beauty. And the chickens were going nuts in there because I made all the bugs available. So hopefully they were in there killing all the centipedes I didn't get to, And I did that classic thing where I just like leaned on my car and went, yeah, I did that. And then I went and I sat in my lazy boy chair with a cup of coffee and I watched my sports show, Pardon the Interruption, and then I read my Christian history book and I kept looking around going, oh yeah, this rocks. And I even treated myself to a bunch of peanut M&Ms because I love peanut M&Ms. That's like the only candy I do. I love peanuts and I love chocolate, right? And the combo is just the best. But I know I shouldn't eat a lot of peanut M&Ms. But yesterday I'm like, I deserve this, you know what I mean? Isn't that, that feeling? You know when you surf for 4 hours and you can barely move? And you're like, I'm so tired, but I feel so good. To me, this is a beautiful, like, physical example of what I feel sometimes I get when I press into God by faith. What do I mean by that? When I live a faithful life, when I engage in fellowship, when I serve God, when I worship God, when I read His Word, when I pray, when I'm firing on all 12 cylinders or whatever. You know they make 12-cylinder cars, yeah? Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, I'm with God. Does that make sense? Yeah, to enter into His Shabbat. Oh, we still got some time left. I keep thinking we're going to run out of time, yeah? Okay. What's that? Say what? What do I do to dive in? All the different things I listed? I don't know. It was all off the top of my head. I don't know. It wasn't written down. But I mean, think about it. It's fellowship in community. It's worship, yeah? It's service. It's prayer. I think there's one more. I left one out, yeah? I think there's usually 5 things. I once learned this thing about a 5-handed grasp. You can grab everything. So it's, prayer, the word, service, fellowship. I'm leaving something out. I don't know what it is, yeah? But those are like what make up our life. But all those things do actually take effort. Like, quite frankly, you all had to make the effort to come to Anchor House. Like, you had to, like, fill out your application. You had to scrounge around, find money or work. Some of you worked to save the money to get here or whatever. You actually had to get up this morning and, like, be here. Like, where's Eugene? Oh, he's at his brother's wedding. Yeah, he's at his good. He made it. Did he make it? I don't know. We hope he made it. He got on an airplane. Hopefully that went well. Yeah. Okay, so to answer Juju's question, yeah, all these things take effort, right? You can't just sit at home the whole day in your lazy boy chair eating peanut M&Ms and then at the end of the day feel good about yourself that you accomplished something. Does that make sense? Right? In fact, I couldn't stand. That would drive me bananas, but whatever, that's a different point. Yeah, whatever, this and that. Okay. So, I'm going to read you these verses out of Deuteronomy. He says this right before they go across the Jordan. Moses says this, "You are not to do as we do here today, everyone doing as they see fit, since you have not yet reached the resting place and the inheritance the Lord God is giving you. But you will cross the Jordan and you will settle the land that the Lord God is giving you as an inheritance, and He will give you rest from all your enemies around you so that you will live in safety." And I love that. Entering in, you've got to go in, you've got to take the land, you've got to be obedient, and then you will enter into the safety And if I could spiritualize that, you in your life, if you do those things on that list, like I just gave you, the 4, hopefully 5 things, maybe I'll remember it, yeah. If you do those things, then you have a shot of entering the rest of God, that you can go through all kinds of weird crap in your life and do so with warmth and conviction. Sorry, a story just popped up in my head, but okay, everybody loves a good story. So when I used to live in South Africa, there was this guy, Richard Ericus, yeah? And he was a World War II veteran. And what happened was one time we were having this elders meeting, and the young guys, and I was one of them, we were kind of freaking out a little bit. I don't know, it was like just a typical church problem. Probably didn't have enough money to do something, I don't know, whatever. But we started to argue with each other, and no, we can't do that, and if you do that, we can't, da-da-da. We were kind of freaking out a little bit. And Richard Ericus says, his South African voice, "Excuse me, gentlemen." We're like, "Yes." And he goes, is it possible that perhaps God could handle your little situation?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Then what's everybody so concerned about here?" And he just kind of schooled us. We all kind of went like, all right, well, maybe we'll just let God handle it. So then later on, somebody said, "Hey, have you ever had dinner with Richard Ericus?" And I said, "No." I said, "Oh, you should have dinner with Richard Ericus and have him tell you stories from World War II. You kind of got to ask right, but if you can get him to talk, it's amazing." So I get myself invited to Richard's house for dinner. He's like in his late 70s, yeah? And so we're eating dinner, and I go, "Hey, is it true you were in the war?" Hoping he'll tell. And he tells me this story, right? This is what happened. They got captured. He was South African fighting on the Allies in Italy, and he gets captured by the Germans, right? And they take him to Milan, and he's in prison in Milan in a German POW camp. But they can hear the Allied forces getting closer because they can hear the bombs and the explosions, and it's getting closer, and every day it's getting closer. And pretty soon they figure they're only about a day out, and everybody in the prisoner camp is super excited because the Allies are going to set them free, right? And the day before they get set free, the Germans are like, "Nope." And they load all the prisoners onto a train, and they're going to take them north up into Germany, into a German. And you can imagine how bummed everybody was, right? Their freedom was like this close, and now they're on this stupid this train. Well, how they had everybody on this train was on the end of every car they had a machine gunner, right? And they told the prisoners, "If you jump off the train, we will shoot you." So Richard Ericus guy and 2 other buddies, they're on this train, and what they realize is every time they go around a sharp curve, there's just a few seconds where they can't be seen by the machine gunner. So they make this plan that when they go around a sharp curve, they'll all jump, and they do. And the 3 of them jump off this train and book it into the forest, and the guy starts shooting at them with a machine gun, but they miss, right? So what happened was they call out a German patrol. And these guys are hiding under, he says, "We're hiding under this big bush." And he says, "Dain, picture this. We're skinny because they've been starved, right? We're wearing like scraps of like prisoner clothes. We're like scared. And we're just, the 3 of us are sitting under this bush, and we hear a Jeep pull up. And we hear German voices, and then we hear boots. And they send this patrol out, and they're sitting under this bush. And while they're sitting under this bush, this young German soldier looks right at the 3 of them, and then just turns away and goes, "Yep, alles klar." And they all get in the Jeep, and they drive away. And he says, all I could figure was this kid just looked at us and just was like, "What's the point," right? So they're like, disguise themselves as peasants, and they start working their way south. Now, this guy's a super solid Christian, right? He's praying the whole time. They get all the way south down to where the no man's land, where the war is actually taking place. And they can see their army, the Allied forces, on the other side of this valley. But they got to get across like this agricultural strip of land. And so they've got like do you call it, a hoe and a rake and stuff. They're kind of like supposed to be peasants. They're like, and they get down to like where the field is, and all of a sudden a German Jeep pulls up, and the guy's like, halt! And they're like, oh crap. And so this German officer gets out and he starts going, papers, whatever in German. And right then, and I wish I remember the name of the plane, Richard Ericus told me the story. These two, they're actually British, like machine gun bombing. They swoop in, and the German guys from the Jeep all hit the ground as this thing strafes them, whatever. And Richard Ericus and his two buddies go running across the field, and they actually make it back to the safety of the Allied lines. And I go, dude, that's nuts. I go, did you get to go home? He goes, oh, no. They fed us, and then we got back uniforms, and we went back to fight some more. How's that? Yeah? My point is this. This is why I believe Richard Ericus, when we're having a freak out in an elders meeting over maybe, there's not enough money, he's like, can God not handle this? And I remember hearing Richard's story and seeing him how he operated in an elders meeting, and I remember asking God, if I could only have the faith of Richard Ericus, but without having to go through what he went through. Does that make sense? Yeah? Doesn't seem like it works that way. But I want to challenge you to think about your faith this morning, because I know that you all have challenges in this room. Like I think some of you right now have a challenge to find enough money to be able to come back after the Christmas break. And I will tell you, cannot God handle this? He can handle this. It doesn't mean you don't have to do something, but you can enter into his rest. Okay, we got what, 5 minutes? How much time we got? 10? All right, 10 minutes. All right. Then let's go verse 5 to 7, Hebrews 4, verses 5 to 7. Where am I at here? Oh, wow, what happened here? Oh, I got completely lost. Oh, here we go. We're not going to spend much time here because we already talked about not fire insurance. Okay, and again in this passage he said, they shall not enter my rest, since therefore it remains for some to enter it. And those who formerly received the good news fail to enter because of disobedience. And he points a certain day. Oh, I love this. Today, through David, he said this. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. And remember I taught you that, I think it was last week, about not treating God as fire insurance, but as God as someone you need to be hanging out with right now. Salvation's for today. And then let's skip down to verses 8 to 10. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken of another day later on. So then, there remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For whoever has entered God's rest has also rested from his works as God did. All this really is he's just comparing again the Old Testament reality of what they had to enter into us today, right? Okay, this is where I was going to talk about Christian fear, okay? I find this sad, but like understandable all at the same time. But I want to encourage you by pointing this out. I know Christians who create fear and anxiety in their faith walk, which to me should be impossible, and yet it is. And so I'll give you two examples, two people I have in my life, even right now. One person I know, she's in her 70s. She's been a believer probably 30 years or so, and she lives in the constant anxiety of she disappoints God. You know what I mean by that? She can never live up to God's expectations of her, right? And I'm always telling her, sweetie, you are loved. You can't work your way out of his love. In fact, I heard something really cool. I think it was in Jungle Jen's devotion that I read today. You guys anybody read Jungle Jen's devotion? So Jungle Jen, she wrote a daily devotional, and I get it online. In fact, it was Jungle Jen's devotional today. She said, the reason why God loves you is because that's who he is. That's who he is. That's why he loves you. Do Do you understand that? In other words, he loves you not because you did that thing perfectly, not because you were obedient in that thing or whatever. Now, disobedience is your own fault, and you can create anxiety through your own disobedience, but it doesn't affect his love for you. And I love that Jungle Jen worded it that way. He loves you because that's who he is. What's that line in the song, You're a Good, Good Father? You know that song? You're a good, good father. What's the next line? That's who you are. That's who you are. I love that 3 times. That's who you are. Now, what's my identity in that song? And I am by you. That's who I am. That's who I am. That's who I am. Isn't that cool? By the way, Brenton Brown wrote that. He's going to be here for, you guys are going to be here for Easter, aren't you? How blessed are we? Brenton Brown, who wrote that song, is going to be here, and he's going to lead worship on Easter Sunday. Is that sick or what? One of my all-time favorite worship leaders. Now, remember, I don't know if I told you this story before, but he was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. He is no dummy. He is an extremely intelligent human being. And I got to tell you, I get chicken skin even thinking about it. The first time, I don't think it was the first time I sang that song. I think I printed it out and I was learning to play it, and I was actually looking at the words, and it dawned on me. There is so much deep theology in that statement, yeah? You're a good, good father. That's who you are, that's who you are, that's who you are. And me, I am loved by you. That's who I am. That's who I am. He is love. We are the recipients of that love. To walk around feeling like I need to be anxiety because God is disappointed in me is completely, you know what that is? Okay, that leads me to my second person. That's the lie of the enemy. It's just a lie. You're not good enough. God probably doesn't like you. By the way, just so you know, it's not like I'm immune to this. You know when I feel the lowest of my lows? When I feel like I totally suck? Can I say that word in this class? Yeah. And when I feel like I should quit the ministry, I can tell you, there's a location on the bypass road. You know where they sell fruits and vegetables down at the end of the road here, yeah? After I preach on a Sunday morning, I often pull out of the parking lot. I'm still waving goodbye to people. Oh, great sermon, Dain. Oh, thank you, thank you. And I start replaying the sermon in my head as I'm driving down to Poipu Road. And all I can think about is the thing I missed, the parts of my sermon that sucked, or whatever. And man, it doesn't happen a lot, especially less and less the older I get and the more mature I get. I think the more my faith gets rooted. But it used to happen almost every time. Now it's way infrequent. I would start thinking, God, I suck. Like, I suck as a pastor. I suck as a preacher. I should quit. Now, where's that coming from? Is that God? No way. Now, it could just be my flesh. I don't know if I believe, demons are speaking to me or whatever. But it is not of God. And if it's not of God, it is of the enemy, which leads me to my next person who I know who lives in constant anxiety and fear. And what she's always afraid of is Satan is in every corner. Satan tried to kill my child the other day. Satan's out to get me. And the other thing she fears a lot is end time stuff. So she always sends me these YouTube videos. You guys ever watch these end times YouTube videos? They're always like, they always have this, they always bust out some Old Testament thing. And they always have the scary music, and it always starts with a montage, a montage of visuals. And so it starts like this. I want to bang on something, but it's like this. It starts out. And then it has like soldiers marching and people in handcuffs and riots and little babies crying, and somebody starving to death, right? And then the voiceover starts. I'm just going to randomly make up. In Ezekiel chapter 25, it says, in the end days, right? What are they trying to make me feel? Scared, anxiety, and fear. And by the way, they're really good at it. And in fact, You know, Rick once told me this. He said, fear sells a lot of books, yeah? And if they can make you feel afraid and full of anxiety, then you can start listening. Well, you can't believe it. People send me these videos like all the time. And I realize these people are living in fear, okay? We fear God. It's a healthy fear. And we fear nothing else. Amen? All right, I ran out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, John ends.